Thierry Breton is here. He is the finance minister of France. Prior to accepting that position in February, he was chairman and CEO of France Telecom. Over the weekend, he was in Washington with the other finance ministers of the Group of Seven, talking about the current accounts deficit and other economic issues facing the world, including the price of oil. I am pleased to have him at this table again. First of all, it's good to see you at this table under a new job for you.
Thank you, Charlie.
And I remind you of a dinner we had in Paris
a few months ago.
A few months ago. And I raised the question, as an American with curiosity but no knowledge would say, and I said, will you be finance minister? And at that time, it was unlikely. What happened?
Well, what happened is that we had a new finance minister after Nicolas Sarkozy, Hervé Guémard, and a few months later, for something that we have the speciality in France, after a lot of pressure with the media, he had to resign, and here I am.
Did you have any reservations about taking this job because you were in the midst of important responsibilities at France Telecom, and my impression is that you had given indications you prefer to stay there at an earlier time?
Charlie, first, in my own value systems, when your president calls you, you have to say yes. And it is true that past November, the president was probably maybe thinking that I may become a finance minister. At that time, I was running France Telecom. I had to close the year. It was a very important year for France Telecom. I had to work with everything I have done. I have to be certain that the plan I was working on was secure. So it was not the best time. Now, in February, I announced the result of France Telecom, the best ever in the history. And a few days later, President calls me.
President calls and you say yes.
Again, I think I had no other options, and I am proud to serve my country.
What surprises you most about the responsibilities and what you have learned so far about looking at the world through the eyes of a finance minister?
Well, first, you know, I was working for the past 20 years almost between the private sector and also the administration.
Right.
So I know quite well the administration. I know extremely well the Minister of Finance because I was a big customer of the Minister of Finance. By the way, I privatized 4 companies in my life, so I know extremely well all the people here. So it was not a surprise to me to become their bosses, because first I know them very well. They're very good people, and it was not a surprise for me to be their boss. Of course, when you run the Minister of Finance of your country, it's not like running a company. A country is not a company. A country is a country with its complexity, with its strengths, its weaknesses, and for me, you know, I have a vision for our country, which of course is a vision that President Chirac asked me to put in place and to organize for him. I know what I want to do, I know what we have to do, and like always in life, everything is a matter of execution. It is true in business, it is true for a minister.
Tell me what you want to do before we raise questions about the vote on the European Constitution. What is this vision? What is it you want to do? What have to?
First, you know that I'm not sure that it is well known and understood, especially on this side of the Atlantic Ocean, that we have made huge reforms in France over the past 3 years. Charlie, remember when 4 years ago, France invented this 35 hours concept, right, telling that you cannot work more than 35 hours per week in France. It was a big story. I think it was a big mistake for our country. We corrected it. We passed a law last year. It was not popular, but it's done now. Everybody can work more than 35 hours, even if 35 hours is a legal time in France. If you want to work more, you can work more. First law. It was difficult and painful, extremely necessary. Secondly, the pension. Pension is a big problem for us and for our children. It will be the big problem in France, in Europe, and in the United States. We had the courage to reform the pension plan. It was painful. A lot of people came in the street. They were against this. Now it is done. It was painful, but it's done. It needed to be courageous. The Prime Minister did it. It is probably a reason why France is doing better than other countries in Europe now in terms of growth. Third one, healthcare system. the healthcare system has to be reformed in France, like, by the way, in the United States too. Yeah. We did it last year. It was also painful. Now, we have made a lot of reforms. We still have some reforms to do, of course. I know what I have to do, but like always, I don't want to say exactly precisely when I will do it, because everything in managing or in running a minister is like in business, is a matter of window of opportunities. So I will have to watch carefully what happens, and when I will see an opportunity, I will shoot.
Let me talk about this big issue of the European Constitution and the vote. Polls suggest that the French may very well vote against the European Constitution. The president felt so concerned that he went on national television to try to make the case. It doesn't seem to have moved the polls.
This is the European Constitution. It's a small book, very easy to read. I suspect that yet not everyone has read it in France. When you read it, you understand that it is extremely important and that it is in the interest of France and of Europe. So now we have 40 days to campaign, and Charlie, I will do it. We have 40 days to explain to our fellow citizens that it is extremely important that France remains into the driving seat of the European Constitution and of the creation of Europe, like we were for the past 50 years. Remember that with Jean Monnet, from Jean Monnet to General de Gaulle.
France has been at the center of the idea of Europe.
Always together with Germany.
Right.
And we need to continue to do this. Yes, it is difficult. Yes, it may be a shaky way, but at least we need to move forward. So I am convinced that within the next 40 days, we will be able to explain to our fellow citizens that it is extremely important for everyone, not only to go to vote, but to vote yes.
But do you think the hostility or the opposition today, without the campaign having taken place, is because an opposition to the government, opposition to the president, an opposition to the idea? Because, as you suggest, few people know what's in the Constitution.
But a lot of people will know. Relating what I said a few minutes ago, we have made huge reform in France over the past 3 years. So probably some people thought that it was painful, because it is true that it may have hurt a little bit their personal comfort. But it was important for this generation and for the generation to come. So maybe today, some people don't answer the right question. The question is, do you want, yes or no, a European Constitution? Some people may decide to vote against those reforms, but they are done. We will not come back on this. So we need now to explain that the question is not, are you in favor of those reforms or are you against? The question is, do you want a European Constitution for Europe in the 21st century?
Let me read to you from an editorial in today's Financial Times. The persistent strength of the no camp ahead of France's referendum on Europe's constitutional treaty on May 29 points to the depths of this national malaise. The opinion poll shows that the vibrancy of the no camp has little to do with specific defects of the treaty. Rather, it reflects voters' frustration with the failure of their national leadership. And then it quotes a guy named Henri Guiano in Les Echos. And he says France is experiencing its worst crisis of confidence since the 1930s. Mass unemployment, deficit, public debt, the lack of innovation, the slowdown in productivity gains, offshoring, the rise of social fragmentation, senseless violence, the crumbling of social protection. All of that, he says, results in a crisis of confidence. I mean, from your observation, is France experiencing a kind of crisis of confidence?
Yes and no. Probably yes for some part of the population. Like here in this country, when I see that in the United States, some of your congressmen are willing to vote a bill saying that all products coming from China across the board has to be taxed at 27%, I think it's exactly the same reaction. I believe it is just a reaction of protectionism. They don't understand what is the word today, so they vote no or they vote against. You have these people in your country, we have those people in our country. So now it means that the politicians have to explain the reality. But the reality, Charlie, is that we are a country which have made huge reforms. We are the country with the highest growth in the Eurozone of all other, or comparing to all other countries in Europe. Even if it's not enough yet, it's higher than all our competitors in Europe, or our colleagues and friends in Europe. We are a country where we spend today 2.2% in R&D. It is not enough. I will push everything, I will do everything I can to go to 3%. But we have a lot of strengths. It is true also that we have to explain that globalization has nothing to do with European constitution. For example, in your country, you are suffering of lacking of industry now. Right. All your industries are going, we discussed this, remember, already a few months ago, from the country to the Maquiladoras, at the Mexican border. Right. This created millions of jobs for Mexicans, believing that at the American dream. But now, all these factories are being closed one after each other to move to China. And this is the reality of our world. So it's our jobs, us, in politics, to explain this to our people, and of course, to help to convert for new jobs in services, in high-value services, in services to the persons, and so on.
All right, let me come back. I actually want to come back to France and what crisis it might face and its own sense of confidence. But since you've raised China, when you and I had dinner in Paris, one of the things we agreed on we would talk about on this table was China, and I didn't get to it the last time. Tell me, as a private citizen and now as a finance minister, how you see the rise of China, its economic growth, its expansion into markets around the world. Here in the United States, as you know, we have a current accounts deficit problem. We have a huge one. Trade surplus, the trade deficit with China alone is $180 billion this year.
Charlie, this is a question, a very important question that we have discussed together with my colleagues at a G7 meeting 2 days ago in Washington, D.C. Right. We had a full dinner on this question. We all agreed to say that this is a concern for all of us. First, the American deficit, the twin deficit, is extremely concerning and is becoming a problem, not only for the United States, but for the world. And I'm happy to see, by the way, that Jon Snow has put in place a very strong and solid program in order to cope with this deficit and come back to reality.
To address the fiscal deficit.
That's correct, right. The fiscal deficit. Then for China, it is true that today the RMB, the Chinese currency, is probably undervalued. And we all see that, we all know that. This is hurting the world community. This is probably becoming to hurt China too, because this favor low added value investment within mainland China. So we believe that we won't be able to last too long with the RMB at the value it is today. But do you have any indication
from the Chinese that they're prepared to change the valuation?
They understand extremely well. They have their own problem to cope with internally, and of course at the end it will be their own decision. What we just said all together is that it will be difficult to stay the way it is today too long. It won't be in the interest of China, it won't be in the interest of the world. Now, regarding the situation in China, it is true that for many goods, China is now the manufacturing zone of the world. Right. And I remember when I was here in the States, the chairman and CEO of RCA, I had to deal with my retailers. And they were telling me, Thierry, if you want to continue to sell your RCA product, please go to China, because at the end, this is what the customer wants. So we need to be serious about it. If we are listening...
Let me make sure I understand you. Go to China to sell your RCA product or to manufacture your RCA?
Okay. Close the facilities you have here.
Right.
Even maybe in the Maquiladoras now, in Mexico border, right. And go to China, because this is what my consumer wants you to do, to have the better price. So at one time, we have to deal with what the consumer wants, what the citizen wants, what the politician wants. And it is true that if we are listening too much to the consumer, we may end with a problem. This is what's happening in some areas in the United States and also in Europe. So at the end, we have to sit around the table and to be responsible.
Okay, but what happened? I mean, what is necessary in order for the United States to reduce its current accounts deficit and for the world to adjust to the idea that China is exporting so many more billions of dollars of products than it's importing? What's the fix?
First, again, the currency problem has to be fixed, or will have to be fixed. Secondly,
But let me just make a point.
Yes.
The dollar has been declining.
Yeah, but not the
You
dollar
would
is
think
stable.
that the dollar would mean that more people would be buying more American products, but it hasn't happened.
The dollar has been declining also because of the fiscal deficit
Yeah.
of the United States. So if we solve the fiscal deficit, the dollar will be healthier and it will be better, I think, for everybody, including for the United States. Now, regarding your first question, the question is a matter of industry, industrialization. You have in the United States 11% of your jobs only remaining in the industry. Personally, I don't think it's enough. In France, we have 22% of our jobs in industry. As a Minister of Finance and Industry, I will do everything I can to maintain these jobs in France. Not only to maintain jobs, but also because I believe that it is extremely important to maintain a base in our developed countries to promote innovation, to create more links with R&D, research and development labs, to favor innovation. This is something that in order to improve your situation in R&D, in innovation, you need to have also a manufacturing base next to you. I decided, together with the French government, to launch new programs in order to favor the development of industry in France. And I think you should do the same in the United States.
Oil prices are up close to $55 a
Yes.
barrel. Is that going to be a permanent fact of life?
That's an
Because of the
issue.
increased demand from China and from India and other places?
That's a very important question that you just raised. This is a question that we have discussed long hours at the G7 meeting. And by the way, you will see that in the communique, we have raised this as a very important issue for the next decade. So it is absolutely true today at over $50 the barrel. The price is much too high. It is true also that we suffer of lack of transparency. We don't know exactly the situation of stock, the situation of the demand and the offer. We need to have more transparency. It is absolutely critical. In addition to this, we need probably to increase also the capacity today. But at the end, Charlie, do you know that every single person on this planet consumes 2 liters of oil every other day? Only 1.5 liters of water just to survive. We, on this planet, consume more oil per day than water. When you know that,
suggests that our appetite for oil is too high.
and in the United States it's 11 liters per day. It means that when you know that it takes 6 months to recycle the water, it takes 400 million years to recycle the oil reserve, we will have a problem.
But do you believe we're going to run out of oil reserves soon?
Well,
in the next,
probably not soon.
In the 50 years?
Probably not soon. We believe that by year 2030, the demand of oil will increase by 60%. This is what we have in our projection. And it is true that by 2050, we may start to need new resources. This is why France has decided a long time ago that the nuclear energy is absolutely critical. And we are one of the only countries to maintain a very strong ability to develop this industry, which will be probably extremely important.
More nuclear energy in the future for France.
And more alternative energy. Alternative energy in order, again, to make the effort that we will need to make, because, yes, the price won't go down too much. We don't have indication that today the price may go back to where it were 2 years ago at $20. We don't have indication, which is a pity for us, but which is also becoming to be dramatic for underdeveloped countries, because this jeopardizes totally their programs to go back to stability.
Increasingly, people come to this table, John Major recently, but a whole range of people, and talk about world poverty as being part of the international agenda. We have the Millennium Project at the United Nations, and many people think they're not going to reach the goals they have set for themselves. Is there more talk among finance ministers in the industrialized world about not only the environment, but poverty being on the agenda?
A very important issue. This is a very important talk that we had together at the G7 meeting. I just want to tell you that, of course, we are all committed to increase our aid support for those countries. In France, we spend almost 0.5% of our GNP for those countries. In the United States, it's 0.14%, I think. We need to increase this, but it is difficult because we have budget decision to make. It's not always popular. This is why President Chirac, a year ago, decided to launch a new idea. We need to be imaginative here, innovative. We need to have new ideas to find a way to generate recurrent additional funding for those countries. One of those ideas was, for example, to say that as a contribution, when you buy an airplane ticket,
when you buy an airplane ticket,
you may been asked if you agree to pay $1 for a specific program, like for example education in Africa. If we do this, we have made a calculation. If we do this, again, it's not a tax. It could be a contribution. We could generate roughly $3 billion additional dollars per year. This is what we need to offer to every single child in Africa, schooling. $3 billion, and everybody will go to school. So this is extremely important to find new ways, because the difference is becoming so dramatic that we need to do something. And it is true with our personal constraint at the fiscal and budgetary level, it will be difficult for us to find the resources. So yes, if we could ask everybody if they are ready to do a little something,
figure out a vehicle they'll draw on. Let me move to a broader question now, and two broader questions. One, am I missing anything that was on the agenda at the meeting in Washington beyond the items that we have talked about that's important for the world of financial ministers and economic and secretaries of the Treasury to address?
No, I think that I just wanted to add something for the first time ever. I think everybody said around the table that the fiscal deficit of our country is becoming to be unacceptable. And it's becoming...
Fiscal deficit of France and the fiscal deficit of the United States and the fiscal deficit of Germany and wherever.
Well, United States, of course, is the biggest, but we all have to make effort in order just to clean the situation that we have built and inherited, creating a huge debt. This debt is bigger than ever, and we won't be able to live by credit too long.
Back to France, finally. I mean, tell me, this editorial in the Financial Times, basically saying France must tackle the crisis in its public finances, and they must deregulate so much products and labor markets if it ever wants to tackle its high unemployment, and a whole range of other things. What ought to be, in your judgment, the great debate in France about the country and its future? What ought to be the subject for people who care about the country, who are concerned about the future, beyond this referendum on the European Constitution and some of the other things having to do with confidence in the future?
There is something which is not acceptable today in France, is the unemployment level. We have 10% of the population without job today in France, and this is totally unacceptable. So I think if we have a debate, it should be this one. Why are we in this situation? When I start my career, Charlie, people were entering into the world of jobs at the age of 18, and they were exiting at the age of 65. At the same time, the lifetime expectancy was at 74. Today, people are entering into the job world at 24, they're exiting at 57, and the lifetime expectancy is now 84. There is a problem. We just have to address this problem. And it means that we will have to change some things in order to cope with this situation, which is something very specific to France. Too much regulation, too much constraint, and then not enough fluidity in the job environment. This is probably the most important thing that we have to do in order to retrieve our flexibility and our innovative spirit.
But are you saying that France has to address the issue of the state dominance in its economy and its life?
No, it is done. It is done. Again, you're talking to somebody which privatized...
Who was in charge of privatization. I understand.
It's done. I'm coming... The fact also that President Chirac and Prime Minister Jean-Pierre Raffarin have asked me to join is I'm coming from the private sector. I'm not a civil servant. So it's a sign that now we are a total open economy, and I can tell you that it is absolutely untrue to believe that the weight of the state today is what it was 20 years ago. It is just not true. The reality is that we are an open country.
Thank you for coming. It's great to see you again.
Thank you, Jerry.
Thierry Breton is the finance minister of France, having previously served not only at France Telecom, but also at Thomson, and I am pleased to have him on this program again, and we look forward to doing this many times in the future. We'll be right back. Former Prime Minister John Major is here. Stay with us.